Hi you guys, Alicia here, and I wanted to go ahead and talk about the masculine and feminine energies. So I've been hearing this a lot of, tapping into the masculine and tapping into the feminine energies, and that it is a role for the female to tap into the feminine energy and the male to tap into the masculine energy. And I just wanted to go ahead and talk about the confusion of this. So many people don't know about the divine and wounded feminine and masculine energies, and that's what I want to go into really quickly. And I'm bringing this up because I was in a Facebook group that was really coming from a place where the majority of the females in there were coming from either the wounded masculine or the wounded feminine. And what I mean by this is that some people were really guarded, were very manipulative, or coming from a fear-based. And based on that alone, trying to control and be in power of certain situations, especially when it comes to relationship, that's actually coming from the wounded masculine. The divine masculine would not allow control, manipulation, or coercion to happen because that is coming from a place of insecurity, lack, and scarcity. The divine masculine would actually have more rationale, logic, reasoning, is courageous, has strength, that wants to protect. That is more of the divine masculine. And on the flip side, in this group, there was also many of the wounded feminine that is very disempowered, that feels worthless, desperate, and needy, that just want a relationship to heal them. And we can see how this is also feminine, but it's the wounded feminine. And for you to really tap into the feminine energy, which many people are talking about, they're talking about tapping into the divine feminine, which is that allowance, that nurturing, that kindness, compassionate, where all things are formed from that creativity. But many people don't understand that they have both. It's not separate, it's not one or the other. Every individual on this planet is encompassed with both the feminine and the masculine. Even though through birth and through societal programming, we are led to believe that if you're female, you have the feminine energy. If you're masculine, or if you're male, you have the masculine energy. And we have this confusion. Especially, it was more prominent back in the 1940s, 50s, and 60s, where you had certain gender roles. And many of the people were stuck in certain paradigms that if you're this gender, you had to be this way. If you're this gender, you had to be this way. And then from that, you had so many emotions being repressed that if you were a male figure, and you had to be macho, you had to be masculine, you had to take care of the family, you had to be the provider. And if you showed any emotions, that was perceived as weakness. That was perceived that you were too feminine, too filled with all kinds of emotions that needed to be suppressed because you were a girl, in a sense. And that was more taboo back in the day. And we could see how this old paradigm continues to come through till this very day. And that's why you would have movements where very wounded masculine females were fighting for equality. And that's when you had that feminist movement. And it was coming from women who were those wounded masculine that wanted to be in control, that were manipulative, that used coercion, and that's why you had a very negative connotation to the feminine movement, because that was actually coming not from the feminine energy, but from the wounded masculine that each and every one of us has. So that aggressive behavior of putting people down, that very fiery fight, and that is coming from that place of the wounded masculine. And we can see how that shifted, how the feminines believed that they were, and many feminines, or many women back in the day, were against the movement of feminism because they're like, oh, if what they're fighting for I don't believe in, because that means I have to work for myself, I have to be independent. And they were more of that wounded feminine, right? Where you're disempowered, you're needy, you're desperate. And it comes from that place of you needing to be taken care of, because that was the programming and that was the conditioning, the paradigm that we were conditioned to believe. That, okay, we have the only way for us to really succeed as a woman, as an individual, is to fit into the wounded feminine. And that was our role. And we were not allowed to be the masculine, because that had that gender confusion, and you had the ideas of, gay, lesbian, transgender, all these roles started to emerge because the suppression of the masculine and feminine energies. And so let's move over back to the masculine, the wounded masculine. And because as boys, as individuals, we're told that they cannot have emotions, so they're suppressing their feelings. And when you're suppressing your feelings, it comes out in anger and fear and manipulation and insecurity. So based on that, and you're interacting with a woman and she's having emotions and you're being told to suppress your emotions, that leads to confusion, to insecurity, and you trying to get away, because if you show emotions, you have to isolate yourself in fear of being rejected. So then over here, the wounded feminine, who was told and led to believe that they can't be anything unless they are provided for by a masculine or a male figure, then if this one rejects them because they're going through emotions and overwhelmment and confusion with their own energy and own emotions, this one over here is going to feel abandoned and neglected and seek validation. And we can see how if a wounded masculine and a wounded feminine mate and have babies and continue, it only creates more generational dysfunction, where now the child is being neglected and abandoned. And we could see how this cycle continues to grow throughout the year.